Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of What's Hot with Sea of Tranquility. That's right, it's Wednesday here on the channel in the co-captain's chair. Just like last week, we've got Mr. Stephen Reid all the way from Scotland. He's got a couple new albums to talk to you guys about, in addition to all the other albums I'm talking to you about today. So, Stephen, what do you got for us today?
What have we got? Well, two very different but kind of linked releases. I have a vinyl edition of Ian Anderson plays the orchestral Jethro Tull.
Yeah, and that came out a long time ago, the original.
It did, yes. There's a reason why we've got another version of it now. And I also have Magenta, the White Witch. Okay, so I'll start with this one because this is brand new. All right. So depending on how you want to count the Magenta catalogue, because it is not the easiest one to understand, this is either the band's ninth or 10th studio album, because the New York suite kind of is treated as separate, but let's not go there. Okay, so the important thing being that this is their first proper full release, studio release since 2020's Masters of Illusion, which was one of my favourite albums from a couple of years ago. Really, really enjoyed it an awful lot. And the thing with Magenta is they have evolved over the time together. But for me, there have always been key things that have run through all of the albums, and that is superb keyboard work from the band main man, Reid, and there has been fantastic guitar playing that really complements that, and of course the unmistakable vocals from Christina Booth.
Of course.
Okay, so the band is usually rounded out these days by bassist Dan Nelson and drummer John Jiffy Griffiths. However, those latter two are nowhere to be found on this new album. Okay, so the lineup for this album is Christina Booth on vocals, Chris Fry on classical guitar, and Les Penning as the storyteller. Now, Les Penning is connected with lots of musicians, probably most strongly with Mike Oldfield. Okay, and then Rob Reid is credited not with keyboards, but with orchestral arrangement. And then there are two soloists that are named, and one is Katie Exelson on flute and Sam Baxter on oboe. Okay, so that in itself will tell you that we're doing something completely different here. Now, as always, the music is written by Rob, and the lyrics are written by his brother Stephen. Okay, so as I say, this is very different. The subtitle here is, under my fingers here,
The cover's very cool, by the way.
Cover is fantastic, yes.
Yeah.
It is by, and I don't even know how to pronounce Bjorn, how do we say this surname? Not a clue. I don't know what the letter in the middle there is. Excuse me.
Bjorn. Jeez.
Yeah.
Bjorn Goris. I don't know.
I don't know either. So apologies. Okay, apologies. But yeah, the work is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's quite a simple little digipack, but the booklet is really nice as well. Really nice as well. Okay. So this is what it says at the bottom here. This is a symphonic album arranged for orchestra, although there is no actual orchestra listed, just the soloists. So a little bit confusing there. And the story is split, as its title also suggests, into three parts: sacrifice, retribution, and survival. Okay, so musically and thematically, this supposedly completes the trilogy of songs that started back with the epic track, The White Witch, from the debut album, Revolutions, long, long, long time ago, and then Lust from 2004's album Seven. And then this album adds an all-new final track to it, which is really, really good.
So they're kind of like doing the saga thing here, right?
Yes, absolutely. This is a full story, and there is storytelling there. So Les Penning, who is the storyteller, he does a marvelous job. He introduces each of these as if it has come some sort of story or novel, or not quite a radio play. We're not playing characters, but he's got a great voice. There's a little bit of kind of John Hurt in there. Now, the introductions are quite short, So if you don't like that kind of thing, if you kind of go, oh, I don't like those kind of, narration thing, there's not a lot of it. But what is there is done very, very well. Draws you in. It's a really kind of soothing but authoritative voice. There's lots of gravitas in there, and it ticks all the boxes for me. I like this kind of thing. People know that. I'm on board. And Rob has done a really spectacular job with these pieces. They're not songs as such. And you would kind of presume that this was his day job. You don't listen to it and go, oh, okay, so this is what he's doing at the moment. You just listen to it and go, sounds like exactly what it's meant to sound like. But Christina Booth, for me, is a superstar here. She is just phenomenal. I mean, she's a great singer anyway. One of my favourite singers in the current prog scene and beyond. She's just so good. But here, her voice is just phenomenal. The phrasing is fantastic. The dynamics that she brings to it are really, really clever. And I just think that it's an amazing performance that she gives. What I would say is there are lots of bands and albums where you think, wow, that's off at a tangent. This is and it isn't. I mean, with the personnel here, if it's got Rob Reid and it's got, Christina's vocals on it, it's got to have Magenta on the front, really. Do you know? They're the key things that make that band. There are reworkings of some of the band's old songs on it. So it has to be Magenta. I can completely understand. I've said previously when we've touched on this album before, is it a Magenta album? Well, it can't be anything else. But the question that I often ask myself when I listen to releases like this is, if it didn't say Magenta on the front of this, would I necessarily pick this up and listen to it? That's a separate question, because I don't necessarily go and listen to lots of symphonic albums that don't have guitars, and I appreciate all of the aspects that are on here, and it's phenomenally put together. It's really, really good. But the answer is maybe not. That is the truthful answer here for someone that has really loved their recent material. Have I enjoyed this? Yeah, I've enjoyed it a huge amount. Is it what I wanted from this? In a selfish way, maybe not. Do you know? And it's cinematic, which I understand. I likened it more to, and I mean this as a compliment, not an insult, more to kind of epic TV music, because that's where it's at these days. It's all about the TV series, and they all have, scores that are written specifically for these shows. They're all pretty phenomenal, both in production and in the sound, all of it. So to be linking this with that kind of thing, it has to be a good thing. So when it comes to the crunch, if I was reviewing this on the website, well, we give it a score, don't we? And that's the thing. And I would need to kind of give it a caveat of some sort. If I was to score this out of 5 for the construction, for the performances, for the atmosphere, or whether it probably meets the intentions that it was meant to, it's a clear 5 out of 5. I can find no fault here. There's not a single thing where I think, well, I wish it did this, or there was maybe an opportunity to do that, or I didn't really believe in this bit, or the story doesn't take me. There's no fault. However, in terms of how often am I going to be drawn to this out of what is a really strong catalogue, to be fair, it's maybe a 3.5. And that's purely
maybe as a Magenta album, misses the mark a little bit. Yes. As just an overall, forget the Magenta name, it's pretty damn good, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I totally get where you're coming from. Misses the mark's maybe a bit harsh, because I think actually it 100% hits the bullseye for what the intention was.
Or maybe it's just not a Magenta album.
And I think that's maybe the thing, is although with those elements in it, I can understand why it is a Magenta album. Does it sound like Magenta? Well, kind of. Do I want a Magenta album to kind of sound like Magenta? Not really. So I'm being really harsh here. If you're more symphonically minded than I am, then I would suggest you're going to absolutely love this. And I do think that Magenta fans will still get a lot of enjoyment from it. And I think it's maybe a situational album. There'll be situations where I think, actually, that is what I want to listen to. But it's probably not going to often be one from the catalogue that I think, I fancy some listening to some Magenta today, so it's going to be the White Witch.
Yeah.
Difficult. It's really difficult because I don't like kind of highlighting things and going, not so keen when I love it, but I'm not so keen, but I love it. Difficult. But there you go.
I've been in that situation before where you're listening to something and it could be by a band you like a lot, and they put out something that's kind of like off the beaten path, a little bit different from the norm, and you're like, yeah, this is good, but it's not really what I want to hear from them.
Yeah.
Right. But you know, it's good, quality is great, right? It's just maybe not affecting you the way you wanted it to. Right. It's weird when you have to like talk about music that you may not have much replay value for you, but you know a lot of people will like it, and you know it's high quality. It's just not for you.
I think it
may not be for you all the time.
Yeah, I think it's much easier to be critical about an album where you kind of think, not so good this time. That is not what this is. This is really good.
Yeah.
Am I moved by it? Not in the way that I would want to be.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, interesting. It'll maybe be a grower, but whether I'll go back to it enough to discover that's the truth. So we'll see.
And maybe for the folks out there watching who really have never listened to Magenta much, for whatever the reason that might be, they just never got around to it, or maybe Magenta's not really what they've heard of Magenta, doesn't sound appealing to them. Something like this might be of interest to them.
Yes, I think that there certainly will be less preconceptions. I've gone in with an idea of what I wanted or expected, although I knew what the album was before I went and bought it. You still kind of think, yeah, how far will they push this and how different will it be? And the answer is it's been pushed quite far and it's really quite different. And yet, I can still tell the person that wrote it. So it doesn't just feel like something else entirely.
Right.
But it certainly, when you go back to Master of Illusion and then come to this, and that is a good thing, that they're so different, because it is meant to be progressive.
Yeah.
And no band should stand still. I don't want them to go and remake the album, even though I really love it. And yet, I kind of at least like them to touch somewhere, and they kind of do. It's really difficult because I don't want to be critical because it's really good, and yet I can't really tell you it's the best thing they've ever done because, well, in my humble opinion, how it touches me, it's not.
Do you think it might have worked a little better if the entirety of the album wasn't exactly like that, and maybe like part of it was and part of it was like normal Magenta?
I think, well, it's interesting because what we're going to come to next, the Anderson Plays Tull album, is that more traditional, there's an orchestra and there's a band. And I do wonder if I would maybe have had more, what I feel at this stage, it's very early to talk about longevity, but I maybe feel that I would be drawn back to this more if there was more of those touching points that I expected from Magenta. So a few guitar solos here and there, a little bit more keyboard atmosphere that I would associate with Rob Reid's sound. Yeah, I think I probably would connect with that more, and I really quite like albums that are like that. And it's maybe because I've asked myself that question quite early on that I have struggled with it a little bit, where I do often when bands step not so far, but really take a sideways step out of what you would anticipate. And I'm often left kind of going, I really quite like this. It's really quite good. But if this had a band name on the front that I just didn't know and I heard a track of this, would I then go, oh, I'm going to rush and buy this? And the answer's probably not.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, and we're going back a number of years, but the Norwegian band Borknagar, who are mostly, like a very, very symphonic black metal band. They released the name is it Universal? I forget the name of the Origin. They released like an all acoustic album that had like no electric guitars, almost no drums, very little keyboards, and mostly acoustic guitars and percussion and things like that. And I remember listening to that and thinking, wow, this is not really what I expected. It's good. It's really well done. Will I ever listen to this? Because it's not really what I want to hear from Borknagar. And you know what? All these years later, that was well over a decade ago. I don't think I've listened to that more than once in 10 years. And I knew it. I knew it. But it's really good. I will tell anybody, it's a really good album. It's so well done. It's just not what I want to hear from them.
I think with this album, there will definitely be camps. I think there will be people, because it's been out for a couple of weeks now, so I think that hopefully lots of people will have heard it. And I think that the comments will be mixed, because I think some people will be going, he just doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. He's just not open-minded enough. That's possibly true, because you bring yourself to whatever you listen to. You can't help that. And I think there will be others that kind of go, step too far. And I think that this will really split camps.
Yeah, well,
and that is
better
better
to
than
listen to for themselves. It's
well, yeah, and it's definitely better than people going, yeah, it's all right. So better having a reaction than no reaction.
no reaction at all. Yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
So the second release that I'd like to talk about, as you have suggested, Peter, has been out for a while. Okay, so this is Ian Anderson Plays the Orchestral Jethro Tull. And it was originally released back in 2005 as a 2 CD release.
Wow, 2005.
Yeah, there you go. That's quite scary, isn't it? Isn't it? And on DVD. Yep. Now, this is the first time that the whole concert has appeared on vinyl. So you can buy it on vinyl, and there are quite a few older vinyl options out there. But this is a nice double album, nice gatefold. And I have to say, there we go. Just the tracks on the back, really in a little bit of detail. The band on there. Ian Anderson is credited with flute, bamboo flute, and acoustic guitar and vocals. I don't know if that's meant to be like that or if it's a bit of humour. When you hear some of the stage raps, there's a lot of humour. I love Ian Anderson and how he just cuts everything down and then plays it and you go, that's amazing. And the records are very nice too. They've got a nice inner, I'll show one, it's got Ian not quite standing on his head so much. So it's a really nice pack. And this has been cut using direct metal mastering. I have no idea what that means, Peter. I've not a clue. Okay, now...
It sounds great though, right?
Yeah. Doesn't it? Yeah. Which is not really what this does, but okay. Now, when we reviewed recently the Thick as a Brick reissue, that was a half-speed master thing. And I admitted at that stage, and I will reiterate it now, I am not an audiophile, so apologies for those who are. I have no idea what direct metal mastering does. It made me think that it should do that, but it doesn't really in that sense. Somebody down below will educate me, and I will thank them for it, because the more you learn, the better it is. What I will tell you is it sounds good, okay? And it sounds live. It's got a vibe about it. There's a warmth. The sound is good. Now, interestingly, or not, I kind of like these things, okay? It's been obviously split across 4 sides, double album, okay? So roughly 25 minutes a side. What that does mean, though, is that Pavan or Pavane or Pavane, which opens side 4 here, that's not where they played it. Okay, so it should really sit here at the start of side 3.
So yeah, okay.
But of course, that would then knock Aqualung onto side 4, which would take side 4 over half an hour. I mean, back in the 90s, we tried this, and vinyl basically melted in your hands. It was that thin. This is not thin. I've had to go to gym classes to lift this. Okay, it really is. You pick up the first time, you're going to go, oh. It doesn't say what weight it is or any of that stuff, but it's metal mastering. Anyway, enough of that. Okay. So the band on this is, of course, Ian Anderson on 45 different flutes, acoustic guitar and vocals, and then you've got a group of guys who had previously been linked with Ian, or would go on to be linked with Ian after this. This was kind of the doorway into something else. So you've got James Duncan on drums and percussion, who Ian had worked with before, David Goodyear on bass and glockenspiel, and he had worked with Ian before and would go on to be in Jethro Tull, as would John O'Hara on keyboards. He also is the guy that conducts all this whilst playing keyboards and accordion. I don't know how you do this and that at the same time. Or maybe it's just for the head, not sure. But I'm impressed either way. And then obviously you've got Florian Opale, I'm sorry, I apologise. And he's playing acoustic and electric guitar, and he had worked with Ian before as well, and had been in Jethro Tull until very recently indeed. You also have the new Philharmonie Frankfurt, conducted by John O'Hara. So that is the orchestra that plays on this. And this concert was part of a set of shows under the Anderson Plays Tull banner that he took out on the road with this band between 2004 in 2006. And now there's not a booklet or anything that comes with this. It doesn't particularly state on here which show it was. Reading online, I believe it was recorded at the Rosengarten in Mannheim on the 8th of December 2004. And you have a varied, not varied set. It's interesting because you have Bourrie, which was on stand-up. Then you have Wandering Aloud, Cheap Day Return, Mother Goose, Aqualung, My God, and Locomotive Breath.
A lot of Aqualung represented, yeah.
A lot of Aqualung. Then you've got Skating Away on the Thin Ice of the New Day from War Child. Then you have Up the Pool, Life is a Long Song, and Living in the Past. Okay, from Living in the Past. Budapest from Crest of a Knave. Then we have We Five, in brackets, Three Kings. Pavane and God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen from the Jethro Tull Christmas album. It was recorded in December, everyone. Okay, so I can kind of give that a pass, all right? But then you've also got a few solo tracks on there from Ian's catalogue. You've got In the Grip of Stronger Stuff from Divinity's 12 Dances with God, Boris Dancing from the Seated Language of Birds, Urology, Calandria's Shade, the Cappuccino Song, and Griminell's Lament from Rupee's Dance. So it's quite a varied catalogue in terms of style and approach, but it's taken from a remarkably small amount of albums when you consider the breadth that's there. However, you have to suit the style. Okay. So interestingly, when I'm talking about Magenta taking, for me personally, maybe a little step too far in one direction, this does not. This sounds a bit like Tull. And it's not Tull because it's Ian Anderson and it's an orchestra, but it somehow meets in the middle and you just accept it as Jethro Tull.
Because he's done lots of things like this just throughout the years. So we it's almost like we expect Ian to do an orchestral or acoustic type of recording every so often, right? Because he has done that.
Yeah, and it's really good. It's great fun more than anything else. It's an interesting take. There are lots and lots and many more live options from the Tull and Anderson catalogue. So realistically, I've got to be honest and say this was not in my collection. And I actually don't think I'd heard this until now, strangely enough. Been aware of it all this time. Don't know why I never went and sought it out, but I didn't. I've had great fun with it. It is just a really lively and vibrant performance, really convincing. You kind of get the impression that everyone is just having a fantastic time. And that's what I want from a live album. You're never going to feel like you were there, but it is fantastic when you kind of, oh man, that was a good night, wasn't it? Oh, hold on, I'm still sitting here. And I mean, some of Ian's stage raps in between songs, I just absolutely adore them. He cuts himself, the music, the audience down to nothing, and basically says, we're all here to celebrate utter garbage. And then plays it and you go, it's definitely not that.
Yeah. I have found that as I've gotten older, and I've loved Tull for decades now, I found that the music of Jethro Tull, no matter what era it's from, is very joyous, and it makes me happy and makes me feel good. And that's a good thing, right? I mean, it's good to have some bands that do that to you, where you can play them any given time and think, you get the warm and fuzzies, right? There's something about their music, and I owe it all to him, to be honest with you, because he's just a clever guy and he knows his audience, and he's I don't know, there's a way about him, whether he's talking, singing, or playing music or writing music or whatever. It's like the guy just oozes creativity and joyousness, and that's a pretty special guy in my opinion.
Yeah. I've always been impressed with the way in which he seems capable to take on characters, both within the music and the songs, because sometimes that's relevant to actually what he's doing, but both the stage persona and also the way he writes about himself. When you read some of the liner notes in some of the more recent books and things that he's put in, there really is that, and he's always self-deprecating. There's always that kind of little bit of sarcasm, and he means it and really kind of doesn't. But yeah, he doesn't want to take himself too seriously. And yet, when you interviewed him not all that long ago on the channel, he is actually quite a quiet and reserved, almost shy and very personal individual. And why would you not be?
I almost didn't expect that, which is interesting. I almost didn't expect that.
When you hear him talk on stage, And he's got this kind of way of talking where he's all over the place and it's all very theatrical and we're all on board, but we're all not. And it's fun. And you immediately buy into it. And then you hear him speaking as himself and you go, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so far removed from you.
Yeah. You almost have to draw him out a little bit.
Yeah.
I noticed in the 35 minutes I talked to him, it's like the first like 15, I was like, man, he's so non-engaging. And then all of a sudden you ask him a question that gets him thinking and talking. And then he opened up. And then the whole second half of it, that's the Ian I expected. So I was like, oh, cool. So you are in there, Mr. Anderson. You are in there.
Yeah.
So, it's fascinating.
We're all complicated, but the difference is you and I are not asked so many questions about ourselves. Can you explain this? Why did you do that? How did this happen? What does this mean?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd like that either, to be fair. So
no, yeah, 100%.
Totally get it. Yeah. Very interesting. But this is lots of fun. Really enjoyed it. This is a lovely edition of it. I haven't heard any other editions, so I can't compare, I can't contrast. But what I can tell you is it sounds excellent. And I quite like it on the vinyl format. There's a kind of warmth to it that kind of makes sense to me as well. And if you haven't heard it, it comes thoroughly recommended from me. Really enjoyed it. And I will be spending a lot of time with this one. I think this will kind of become a bubbling under favourite in this catalogue for me because it is different without being all that different. And the material here lends itself to this style. I mean, Jethro Tull have never been that far away from orchestral or folk or involving more organic instruments and various things like that. So it doesn't feel like a massive step, and yet it feels thoroughly integrated. And a lot of rock orchestral crossovers don't always manage that.
No, they don't. Yeah, they don't.
So I think that this is definitely one of the better ones of those. And I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So yeah, really pleased to have it.
Cool. So there you have it, everybody. Some new releases from Magenta and Ian Anderson playing the music of Jethro Tull. And that one is not the new vinyl issue of it, but that was, some of you may be like, oh, I think I have that in my collection somewhere. Well, if you don't have it on vinyl, now you get the full show, two LP set. So yeah, worth checking out. So it looks pretty cool. So there you have it, everybody. I think Stephen, in next week or two, we'll have you back for new Gandalf's Fist, I believe.
Yes, I had hoped to have it for this week, but that just hasn't quite worked out. I've got a horrible sneaking suspicion it's going to arrive here tomorrow. I have heard it. It is a grower. I am enjoying it. It's called Widdershins. Okay, yes, I will explain what Widdershins means. I had to Google it. Okay, when we review the album, it's got Scottish origin, supposedly, meaning I had never heard it in my life before. But yes, a very interesting band, underrated band, and another good album from them. So yes, Widdershins by Gandalf's Fist shall be soon.
So stay tuned for that. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together, all the damn time. I think that's going to be it for the new product reviews today, because we brought a lot to you today. God, you guys got plenty today. I'll save more for next week because we still have the rest of the year to finish out. So till then, we'll see everybody real soon. Stay tuned here on the channel tomorrow. We've got the Monsters Den tomorrow night. And of course, Martin Popoff and I will be back Friday morning at the Funhouse, giving you the show we promised last week. So that's coming at you on Friday. And then, of course, Stephen, Simon, and myself will be back on Saturday for the UK Connection, and then ranking the albums on Sunday. That's right. It's going to be Magnum Day on Saturday. So stay tuned for that, as we will be ranking the songs on Magnum's A Storyteller's Night. Till then, for Stephen, Reid, I am Pete Pardo. Good night, everybody.